Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Thunderstock Show, a collection of valuable brainstorms to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property as the founding fathers would have intended. Today's guest is John D. Hanson. John is a people person, to put it lightly. He is into LinkedIn. He is starting a school community, and he's got a lot of business development and sales background. So it's going to be an interesting conversation on how to connect with people and how to grow your network. John, how's it going today? This is our second attempt at a podcast. So far, so good.
Yeah, I know, right? So far, so good. It's interesting you let off with people person, because if you had known me when I was a young adult, there's no way. I was believe it or not, nerd, like shocking. No, yes, I was a nerd, highly analytical. I could not just take or leave people. I could leave people. It didn't matter to me to be around people. I got an accounting degree, so I thought I would enjoy doing numbers because I was good at it. Turns out I hated doing numbers. And over time, getting married, being a parent, being in different roles in ministry and military, I began to enjoy people. And then the combination of public speaking and business coaching, I found that I got energy from adding value to others. And so a dramatic shift in my life from where I started to where I am now, where I enjoy being around others, and especially if I can add value to them. So I look forward to our conversation too, because I know we share a lot of not just values, but kind of mindsets and approaches to business and life. So I know this time is going to be really enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. So when you were growing up as a kid, did you say, I always want to be an accountant, but then you had military and ministry experience. So what was the order of operations? Like, what did you set out to do when you started your career?
Yeah. So because I was good with numbers, with financial numbers, I thought that's what I wanted to do. So I got a degree in accounting, and I even had a job in it when I was in my early 20s, but I didn't like it. I didn't like how, of course, it's money numbers, so they have to match. That was frustrating to me. And sometimes that's not easily found, because you're off by pennies, you're still off. So I learned that I didn't actually enjoy how tedious it was, even though I had a skill in it. And that was an insight that I didn't really connect the dots until later. That means just because you're good at something doesn't mean you want to do it for the rest of your life. So I actually didn't find out that I was entrepreneurial until I was near 40 years old. I reflected back on my life, and when I was 7 or 8 years old, I was selling poorly drawn, poorly colored, like pencil and crayon drawings to my neighbors for whatever change they had. Nickel, dime, quarter. I never got any bills, I don't think, but I still sold some. Nobody told me to do that. I just went and did that. I didn't even have the lemonade stand. I wasn't even good at art. I just thought this would be a way I could make some money. And I didn't realize that that was an entrepreneurial spirit until decades later, when I reflected back and realized that whenever I go into any opportunity, I come in with an ownership mindset. Like, if this was my place, it's not. But if it was, how would I make things better? Because I don't just come in and do my job, stay in my box. You hired me to sell stuff, so I'm just going to sell stuff. I always have well, how could this be better approach? And that's something that I didn't realize until I was about 40. So then the ministry came along after.
Well, you started, so you didn't go to the military first? You started as an accountant?
I started as an accountant, yeah. And the ministry part was I earned my accounting right out of high school. I took some credits and did all my correspondence, got right into work when I was in my early 20s doing it for nonprofit. I did some. Around that same time was when I got into part-time ministry, and that got to be in Northern Kentucky, Florence, Kentucky. Florence Y'all with the water tower there as you're going down 75. I was there for 8 years in Northern Kentucky. Started off in the choir, and the music minister quit. And the deacon said, I think you could do it. I'm all right. So I could sing, I could read music, I could lead music as early 20s. And so here I am, leader of the ministry of music at this 100-member church in my early 20s. Well, the same church then was like, we need an accountant too, and you have an accounting degree. So like businesses, the small church was like multiple hats.
So you recruited.
I was recruited, and eventually had a church of my own, a little bit smaller, about half the size, for a couple of years. In my mid-20s, married at that time for a couple of years. And so ministry came first. Military actually came significantly later. When I was 32 years old, I got laid off. I had looked at military because I wanted to get a bachelor degree, but I wanted it paid for. I didn't want to pay out of my pocket. And I thought, my grandfather served, my younger brother served. And this is something that intrigues me. I've always had a love for military history in particular. So I thought, I'll look into it. And I did, but it wasn't quite the right time. A year later, I get laid off. and just happened to get connected with a recruiter that I respected, and that respected me, and was honest with me, and tested extremely well in the top 1%. So I went into the Ohio Army National Guard at 32 years old. My first option, I wanted to go into the Air Force. So with the score, I could go anywhere, but I was too old. The cutoff was 29. I was like, dang it. Because two reasons. I knew those skill sets transitioned really well on the civilian side into IT and tech heavy fields. But then secondly, they had the easier boot camp because the
Right.
Marines would kill me. There's no way I could do the Marines. My younger brother did that.
So you
No,
did
no, not for
National
me.
Guard?
Yes, I did Army National Guard for 8 years, deployed to Iraq in 10 to 11. And
Oh,
that gave
wow.
me some great opportunities to do leadership, paid for both of my bachelor degrees. Good experience, good life experience.
Huh. 8 years military. Okay.
Yeah.
But not
Yeah.
like normal people, not like the average where it's 18 and then, you're done.
No.
That's
And it was
a pivot.
probably better, Ross, because if I had gone in as an 18-year-old, I would have made such horrible decisions. So when I went through
Yeah.
basic training in Fort Benning in the summer in Georgia, I was 32. A good number of the recruits that were there were what they call split ops. 17-year-old high school juniors were going through their basic training. Then they go back to high school, graduate, and go off for their advanced training the following summer. So here I am, almost twice their age. So I learned patience the hard way that summer because, thinking of myself as a 17-year-old versus someone that's almost twice that age, I just had more.
I'd imagine
patience.
they'd ask you an awful lot of times, hey, can you go buy us beer? What's that like?
I never did have that problem because they knew I was a stickler. I didn't drink at the time, so I was a non-drinker. They knew that, and then when they knew that I had a ministry background, some called me preach, and I got old man on top of that, right? Because I was 32. But I learned not only patience, but I learned that was the toughest thing I had ever done as an individual in my entire life. Still is. Deployment wasn't even as hard as that, and I realized
Really?
that if I can accomplish basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia in the summer with a bunch of 17-year-olds, then I can do anything.
Oh, that's awesome, man. So then did you go back into ministry when you were done with the military?
No, it was a period of that 8 years, I guess it was a total of 10 that I was in ministry. After, in 2005, is when I transitioned into what I'll call the business side of things and really loved that. Got into manufacturing in different roles. I love how things are made. I've been fascinated with that since I was a kid. And so I got to work in different parts of that, whether it was warehousing and inventory or the actual manufacturing side or in sales and industrial automation. I just love being a part of how things are made and how they're made better, safer, faster. That always fascinated me. Like, how could you have 1,000 pieces on one end of the building and 900 cars come out per day on the other that not only run, but run really well? That just fascinated me. Like, who comes up with ideas like this? And I got to be a part of that in several different ways.
So fast forward to today.
Yeah.
I love the story you said earlier, rewind, where you said when you join an organization, you're like, how do I approach this from the perspective of if I own the place, what would I do to try and make it better? Which I have experienced owning and I've experienced being the employee. And I've had that similarity as you where, well, if I call the shots and I was in charge, this is what I would do, like pretty bluntly, sometimes unsolicited, often unsolicited.
Yes.
But how did that translate into corporate growth? One, that ownership mindset, but then starting your own practice, like you've got a lot going on with, having a family and a full-time job and starting your own business. And a lot of people listening, I believe, are in this limiting belief that, well, I can't start my own business because I have a job and I can't leave my job because it's safe. And you're just like, well, let's build both.
Yeah, it was a progression. It started when I wrote my first book. I think I'd back up 2016. Let's back up there because that's the first time I got into B2B sales. I had gotten downsized from a corporate role and downsized to a different one. And that's where I saw they had a strength in customer service because they measured it in both roles. And that's where I realized this is a strength. And I thought, I'm going to write a book about this. Came about in about 2017 when I decided I'm going to write a book about the strength that I have in customer service and share that with other frontline leaders or teams that provide customer service. And that's when I got into the customer experience world. I didn't even know it was such a thing until 2017. Well, as I started getting into that and created my own LLC and then started putting together a book idea, that's when I realized discovered this thing called personal branding. People have a brand. person and organization has a brand. They either have it by default or they have it by design. And when I realized that I can have a personal brand by design, that's when I decided, all right, so I have one. Now I'm going to be intentional about growing that. And that's when I started focusing on customer experience and not only wrote that first book, but then was on panels overseas. I did public speaking. That kind of got my personal brand, my side hustle business going while I was still greatly enjoying the 9 to 5 sales role I had in industrial automation at the time. Matter of fact, I set records in that first time, never selling B2B before and never selling industrial automation before. That strength of customer service combined with authentic selling really helped me make a great living and enjoy what I did. And then that's where I realized this is something that my side hustle grew to the point where I couldn't do both anymore. And that's when I went full time, short lived because of COVID. But that's when I went full time into public speaking and consulting. And that only lasted for a few months because of COVID. So I went back to sales. But that's where I realized there's things that I love to do. When I first started with that company, they were very receptive to the ideas that I had because I helped them with their online presence. I helped them with SEO. I helped them with marketing. I helped them with branding. I helped them with social media. And I set record sales my first full year there. So I had all those things going on. I added value. And for the first couple of years, they were listening. And then the culture shifted. And I find this tale happens often. You probably do too, Ross, where the culture then, if it takes a sideways turn, the things that were adding value before aren't being heard and they go back to either what they've known or always done and hire one toxic hire can dramatically impact the culture of a place. And so the value that I was adding at first wasn't valued halfway through my time there. And that's where I realized I need to be building something on the side so that I can go to doing something I fully enjoy and add value to individuals and organizations that want what I have to offer.
It's interesting thinking about the impact of culture on the workplace.
Yeah.
I can attest throughout certain times where I've been in I've had, there's like 4 options. You could be the wrong person in the wrong seat, and that's just a shame. You could be the right person, the culture fit in the wrong seat, which with a good company and the right size, you can, there's going to be internal moves made to make it right. I've seen that happen. And then you can be the wrong person in the right seat. So you're great at your job. It's just the cultural alignment is just not there. And then best case scenario is you're the right person in the right seat. And then it's like, oh, great. We're firing all cylinders. And if organizations can get that all the time, then they should get into corporate training because it's a very common problem that I think will always be an issue to be solved. What about an organization's culture attracts you to it? Like what, you spent time being part of organizations as well as your entrepreneurial endeavors, but like, if you were to get excited to join an organization, what would that culture look like and why?
That's a great question because I was trying to figure that out in my career journey, which is quite diverse and has given me a strength when it comes to speaking and workshop facilitation and business coaching. But it can be a challenge to find that because you're right, it's not common. They do exist, but it's rare to find them. And so I really boiled it down to when I was trying to identify who's going to be an ideal coaching client for me. What does that avatar look like? What are some clues that I should be looking for to determine if someone is far more likely to do what I recommend as we work together? I'm not just coming up with something and telling them what to do. It's from our conversations, we both determine, all right, here's next best steps for you or your organization. Are they going to be more likely to implement that or not? Because I don't want to waste their time nor mine, and I don't want them to undervalue what I have to offer. So what are those qualities? And as I was working to identify that for an ideal client, that's where I also realized, well, this makes for an ideal culture too, if I can find this. And the more of these they have, the better of a fit they'll be. And I think the number one, I'd list it as entrepreneurial. You think, well, how does that apply if I'm not creating something new? Entrepreneur doesn't mean that you have something totally new the market's never seen before. It's your approach to how you do business. And it came from the E-Myth book by Michael Gerber, who identified 3 very broad categories: technicians who love to get in the weeds and stay there, business managers that run a business very well, but they don't know the ins and outs, the nuts and bolts, nor are they entrepreneurial, which is the 3rd category. Entrepreneurial business owners, leaders, professionals are focusing on how do I do the very best to grow so I can go to the next chapter. Their identity isn't wrapped up in what they do. they're really focused on growth. That's the main thing they're looking to achieve, whether it be as an owner, grow to sell, grow to transition, hand it off to the employees or to a key team member, or have that thing running so well on its own, I can start something else. But it's entrepreneurial where it's what's next, it's growth focused. And so, what are those qualities? And I think the top one was curiosity. Curious. Do they ask a lot of questions? Too many people and organizations are content with what they think they know versus what is actually going on. And so I think deep down inside, they know things could be better or different, but they're afraid to ask because of the answers they're likely to get. So it's better to just work harder and harder, do more of the same, hoping that something will come together magically, and then you'll hit that growth or achieve that milestone you have. That's not how life works. And so the ones who are curious are the ones who ask great questions, because when you ask great questions, they could be hard sometimes, you get great answers. And that's John Maxwell, good leaders ask great questions. You want to be a leader, you've got to ask great questions. So I think that's the number one that I see, but there's several others. Like, do they take action? I mean, are they committed to executing on ideas? Are they always learning? So that idea of curiosity too comes into a question that I ask. The continuous improvement question is, what was the last thing you changed within your organization and why? If they can't give you a clear answer, then they probably haven't changed anything or improved anything. And so there's just some qualities that I look for. I broke them down to about 7 or 10 qualities. And so I look for those things within people and within organizations to really determine, could we be a good fit, or do they have something really good going on here?
It's an interesting approach. I think curiosity is not just for business culture, but for even friendships or, all types of relationships people I just want to talk to. I find that some of the most impressive professionals and experts in any field, regardless of what it is, maintain a childlike curiosity that they're perpetually figuring things out. They've never arrived at the destination.
Yes.
And part of that is just pure love of the game. But the other part of it is like a quiet confidence where when you're really good at something, you're aware of where you're not good at things. And then you try to figure out, okay, how do I improve? Whereas I find people that are lackluster or maybe just, not hitting their full potential have arrived at the destination. Like, okay, I don't need to listen to you. I don't need to listen to this, that, the other thing, because I know what I need to know. Adding any more would be a cognitive load I don't want to deal with. So I'm going to pivot a little bit. Yeah. This question's around, how did you know the time was right to start your own business and get into entrepreneurship? And what precipitated that decision?
Yeah, so that's also another aspect to it. I think the best time, unless you're single and can live on a couch and ramen noodles while you figure it out, because I couldn't. I was breadwinner, sole breadwinner, large family, counting on me. The best time to do it is while you've got a good job that pays well. That's the best time to be exploring, what else am I good at? Now they're finding today that more people have a side hustle than don't. So it's not frowned upon by employers. As long as you're upfront about it, I do this occasionally and it doesn't interfere with my work. And matter of fact, makes me a better asset to your company because of the things that I bring to the role here and the value I can add to your organization. And this generation, as they get younger, are more and more entrepreneurial than ever because it's so easy to launch a business nowadays. So I think it's gotten easier than ever. And I think that's both a good thing and can be a bad thing because social media does a fantastic job of promoting the idea that you can get rich so easily. 0.001% do, but the rest of us, which is just about all of us out of the 8 billion people or however many billion have a side hustle, it takes a little bit of time. It takes a little bit of time to figure out.
Absolutely reject and detest the idea of get rich quick or get rich easy. Because of everyone that I've ever met that would be considered self-made, which means they didn't win the lottery or inherit some sort of fortune, they've got a skill that they've applied to the market and been rewarded for the skill. Some people, if you're self-aware enough and hey, at an early age, this is my skill, great. It just takes some people longer to figure out, or it takes people longer to master. But like the idea that get rich quick or easy is some sort of norm, to me, is just like the number one barrier, not to start, but to continue entrepreneurship. I've met plenty of people who have started business and they've just been like, yeah, well, and just brushed it under the rug and moved on back to the job, which is fine. Try things out. If you don't like it, you don't have to, you're not a prisoner to a side hustle.
Right.
But the other token is I've met people that have had some like glimmers of talent, like developing a skill. Like I definitely was interested in doing work with them. And then their idea, probably influenced by social media, was, all right, in 12 months, I want to have $1 million. And I'm just like, honestly, I wish that I had a superpower of emotional intelligence to let them down lightly and easily. It's like, if you can figure out how to do $1 million in 12 months from just starting, I'll work for you. Right? Because you know something that I don't have. It takes a heck of a lot longer than what you think, and a lot more effort and a lot more trial and error and figuring stuff out than just watching a few YouTube videos and making a website.
The barrier to entry is so low now that the quote unquote promise of being wildly successful and wealthy from an idea that goes viral, nobody does the research because social media doesn't post that because nobody'd watch it. But if you looked at the lives behind the scenes of the people that became quote unquote an overnight success, there was a lot of things that didn't work. Almost every highly successful people, and I interviewed a number for my book, Winning Secrets. I interviewed, and their story was consistent. It took years. It took things that didn't work, and some didn't work very well at all, where they lost money or it was a setback. But they learned from all of those things. And what I learned significantly in that time in those interviews with them was the learning curve of what didn't work is what helped them figure out what did. And that's just something there's no shortcut to that. Now, I would take that back. There's no immediate shortcut to that. The best way to shorten that learning curve is to add a mentor or a business coach in your life that are steps ahead, that have been there, done that. The challenge with that is, with business coaching, there are so many coaches out there nowadays. How do you know if they're really who they say they are? That's why I think mentors are a safer place to start, because they're usually in your close circle. Like, these people, or someone you respect says you should talk with this person. I know them well. So it's an immediate warm introduction. Mentors, I added one in my life in 2019. It was a significant jump for me in confidence and in opportunities that came soon after, not just because of their insights, but actually just borrowed a little bit of their belief in me, of what I was capable of doing. And so mentors are a great place to start. I have coaches in my life too. I have had coaches. I have something that I invest into regularly. But great first step is adding a mentor, because those are the ones that are happy to give back to a person who will put in the work. If you're going to put in the work, they will give you the time once a month, twice a month, whatever you decide. And they'll meet with you and they'll give you ideas, answer all your questions. Say, here's what I'm thinking for next best steps. That's a great place to start. And that shortens the learning curve significantly, because you can learn from them of what not to do, and it'll get you there sooner for sure. But there's no shortcut to where start here and then tomorrow everybody knows your name and you're famous and rich. It doesn't work that way.
I agree with the mentor thought pattern. I also think that the analogy of, anyone can climb a mountain. Almost anyone can climb a mountain. But depending on the mountain you want, you might want a Sherpa or like a trail guide. Say, hey, here's the path that I've been to the top. I've been there before. I've taken other people there too. Trust me, the person still has to take the steps to get to the top of the mountain. But now they have an informed optimism based off of like borrowing from somebody else's experience.
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, you might, you still have to put in the work to the top of the mountain. It just becomes a heck of a lot more clear and a lot more of a confidence building activity versus, look, going off the same analogy, some of my first tries at entrepreneurship, I can think back to my late teens, early 20s. I would just get lost off the trail, and I wouldn't be taking I would be like making some progress and then take a hard left turn, and I'm off the trail, and I'm like, where am I? Luckily never got eaten by a bear in this analogy, but the reason I bring that up is it's so overlooked. You mentioned, like, how do you know of all the coaches?
Yeah.
It's like, I love that question because it applies to fractional CMOs. I don't think that I do.
Right.
It applies
more and more fractionals out there.
It applies to really vetting. Even, I help companies vet the right marketing agency for them. There's zillions of marketing agencies out there. There's a lot of opportunity. Like, how do you determine which? And one of the things that I look for, John, is, do they have founded confidence that they can help you? And that boils down to a couple factors. One, have they themselves done it? Have they themselves done it and helped others to do it? Do they have a unique perspective that has a lot of similarities with your core values and your own journey? And do they have the energy and capacity like available to help you do it? And if you ask those like questions, going back to being curious, you typically can get better answers. I'm going to ask you, when you started business, you started doing your coaching, was that like, what were your first steps? And was it the mentor that really helped you to take the first steps and then you just ran? Or were you really figuring it out, as you were going?
That's a good question. I think it was a bit of both, where I knew that I wanted to do that, but I didn't know how to get there. You don't just go from being not known to being known. That was something I worked on. So personal branding came first. Then I was working on, it was a combination of being a personal brand, but also leveraging the heck out of and learning a tool of LinkedIn, which was tremendously helpful, not just for personal branding, but also in my 9-to-5 sales role. I had great success because of that. And then it translated into an area of expertise because I was in it and learned it and grew everything organically because I loved the platform. That has become something now where I've done so many years in it. I can speak with confident expert advice on how to make the most of this platform. And there's social proof that I know what I'm talking about, because if someone goes to my LinkedIn, they can see that. On the other hand, the problem is anybody can put together a website. AI can put together a website for you now. So that's not the kind of social proof that's going to be easily found, because I worked at it over time, building my personal brand and then building my social media presence and my online presence in SEO. Because I built those things over time, there was proof there that people could go to see, oh, he does know what he's talking about. Whereas some that are like, where should I start? Like, I know I can add value, but I don't know what to charge. I don't want to overcharge. I don't want to undercharge. I totally get that, because that was something I wrestled with too. And that's where I realized you've got to start with something you have an area of expertise in and get better and better and better at that. So you're probably going to end up feel like you're undercharging at the beginning, but that's where it has to start. Don't follow the thing of, well, if you don't get enough customers, just charge twice as much. You'll end up charging $50,000 and having no customers. You got to start somewhere where you're adding value to prove that you could do whatever it is that you're going to be marketing. Secondly, you've got to have that confidence that I can do this. And then third, you'll figure out what's a reasonable amount based on what generally goes within the market. But you've got to get those testimonials. You've got to get that experience under your belt. And that takes time to build. It doesn't have to take decades or lots of years, but it's going to take a good amount of time before you can prove you can add value to an individual and organization. And that was just something I had the luxury, I'll call it, of doing part-time on the side while I was working full-time. So I didn't have to like burn the boats. And that's why I think some people get burned out and go back to a full-time job, was because they got into it too fast, too soon, and didn't have enough built. Like it took me years, but if you had Googled my name in 2016, you wouldn't have gotten anything, maybe a mortgage. You Google my name in 2020, significant jump of what you find. You Google my name now, John D. Hanson, I'm usually 8, sometimes 10 out of 10 first page results on Google. That took years to build. Now, it doesn't have to take that many years, nearly 10 years nowadays, but it does take consistent effort over a period of years to get to that point. So it takes time.
Yeah. The way I interpret that story, John, is not, for anyone listening that maybe is thinking of getting started, and it's not to deter people from getting started and saying, oh, it's a lot of work, it takes a long time. It's like, no, you have so much runway if you are still at your job and you're in the black, like you don't have to dip into your funds, you can take care of yourself and your family. People, if they want to build something, should look at that and be inspired, because it's like, look, you don't need to compress your time horizon. Like, don't make a decision in business that if you're right, you're back to baseline and you're going to be just taking care of things. And if you're wrong, you're broke.
Right.
Like, do things where if you're right, you're rich. And if you're wrong, you're okay.
Yep.
It's just elevating the baseline. And a lot of that's extending the runway from a time horizon standpoint, where I love the quote that people are often surprised by what they can accomplish in a decade and disappointed by what they accomplish in a year.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely guilty of that in my 20s. I was,
Sure.
I looked around at my peers and I pursued every passion and interest that I could surmise in that decade, I pursued like full force. And I learned an awful lot about what not to do, but I think the work worked on me more than I worked on it. Like it changed me quite a bit. And I see some friends that I'm still friends with and they're great, but like they only focused on their job and they're just like, I don't know what I would do without this job. And I'm like, that's scary to me. That's not security to me. That's really scary because now as a fractional CMO, my business is intended to be part-time, to be like transient, not for forever engagement. And that to me is more freedom, but it took honestly 12 years.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes time. And I know people don't necessarily want to hear that. I feel that too, because you want to be successful sooner as opposed to later. One thing that I would have done, hindsight is perfectly 2020 when you're looking backwards. But one thing I would have done, particularly back then, if it was available, it's so available nowadays. What I would have done was figured out, all right, what can I delegate off to someone else that fractional, what you can get done with AI, let alone paired with who's good at AI on a very reasonable budget, what they can do for you to help fast track your personal brand growth and your content creation and your lead generation efforts, that can significantly shrink the back end of things. Because you want to fail fast is how Sarah Blakely, from the founder of Spanx, says. Her father taught her that. If you're going to fail fast. But you want to do those and kind of testing here, testing there, seeing what works while you still have the 9 to 5 income. Because if you're doing it, testing it while you're going and you've already burned the boats, desperation kicks in, and that is not a good place to grow a business from, because you're going to think differently, you're going to sell differently. People can feel that. And instead, if you build systems in place, and you're like, systems, yeah. If you just have a person doing your social media and your lead generation and your content testing for you on a very fractional basis, and you're focused on getting in front of clients, and that's all you have to be concerned about. Imagine how much sooner you'll get started figuring out this worked, this didn't work, while you're making a little bit of money. You don't need much to break even when you've got a 9 to 5 going, and then you've got someone working for you so that you can be focusing on the thing that when your business does take off, you better not be doing the admin and the social media and the lead gen. Someone else should be doing that for you. That's where I did it wrong, where I didn't budget in for that. I tried to bootstrap everything, and I was somewhat successful at that. But in the roller coaster ride of entrepreneurialism, when things are really good and very busy, you don't have the time to bootstrap it. So you hit this peak and then you'll hit a valley because you didn't keep the momentum going. That's when I should have put aside a little bit and had someone start doing those activities for me to keep that going. And so that's often what contributes to that roller coaster ride as you get started. What if you could build that in from the get-go? And it's not that expensive nowadays to have an AI savvy VA that can do these things for you on a fractional basis.
Yeah, I will comment on that as well. I've been, for as long as AI has been publicly available in the realm of marketing, I've been testing and using the tools. And I will tell you that leveraging AI is an awful lot like what a website is nowadays, where it's never been easier to use
Yes.
AI and to use it to like a basic degree of competence where it can be quite helpful. Absolutely agreed. I think that it's never been more accessible, but the ceiling has never been higher and the floor has also never been higher. So like if people aren't using AI to some degree in fashion their business, I strongly
Oh my
suggest you
gosh.
start. But it depending on where you're at with business, like I actually over the last 18 months or so have been working like a duck on water where my feet are going really fast on the water.
Crazy
You
underneath. Yeah.
see some forward progress with
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah.
And I started an AI automation company as a co-founder because I basically off the premise of like, okay, of all the experience I have with marketing, both leadership and execution, and I've seen the marketplace, listed out all the things that I like, all the things that I don't like. And then I was like, let's focus on solving these super niche, unique problems that myself and my clients address. That in and of itself is a brand and a key differentiator, right? There's
Right.
AI tools out there that you can sign up for a subscription and they'll do a thing and they can do that thing for everyone. Great. That might be helpful. My approach to business and to creating AI solutions is let's be curious and think of I'll ask all of the questions of what exists currently, what we want to exist, what the company's pain points are, what their customers' pain points are. And let's come up with a cost-effective, like high ROI leverage thing. The VAs can't do that yet, but in 5 years, they might be as sophisticated as some of the engineers that I have because the way that the tool is going. And then we have to figure out what's the new ceiling. So to your point, John, it's like always do the basics. VA now with the power of AI is worth so much more at the same rate than a VA 5 years ago that had no access to the tool.
That's right. Yes. And if you're not using AI, so I'm a purist. Like my writing, when I write books, that's me. That's not AI. But when I do content, I do video, heavily video, because it's viewed 20 times more than written content. So I do a lot of video content, but I take the transcripts and then I plug that into AI and say, all right, now give me long form, give me short form, give me social media, give me email, newsletter. Take this content that I created, that's my stuff, and put it into words for me. Because I already spoke them, but I want something that's compelling and interesting, that's in my voice, so it learns my voice and how I write. Because I don't just copy and paste, take my transcript, I do copy and paste that. Those are my words, word for word. And then I give it to it. So I'm training it on how to speak and write like I would, because it's exactly word for word what I just said. And so AI, I use that for note taking. I'm sure you do as well. Last year, I started taking that with anytime I have a meeting where I can record. I've got a full transcript for my records that I could share with the person who was my guest. There are so many ways to use AI, and I know I'm just scratching the surface.
You can integrate that with the CRM. I know as a salesperson, you know what it's like, scribbling handwritten notes in in-person meetings.
I got to enter
this in. I do too. You got to enter that in to the CRM. Like I'll take handwritten notes so I can remember it, and I have a bit more of an attachment to the note. But I'll use the AI call recording tool, for example, to make sure that my CRM is perfect, to make sure that all the action items are captured. And then, like you said, there's a manual process. The thing, and I don't want to get too heavy on AI here because there's other topics I want to talk about, but the thing that I've found to be most valuable to AI is figuring out, okay, we know that manually, if we do steps 1 through 10, using AI and the source material, we can get this output. Okay, how do we train an AI agent to do steps 2 through 10? I'll do the first step. I'll give the input to start off the kicker. And how does it go from all of the processes in between to get exactly or better what I would do with those 9 additional manual steps? That is where I am finding a lot of success with AI now, that a lot of people are not necessarily aware that there are AIs who can daisy chain and integrate within one another.
Well, it's like a team.
Communicate. Yeah, it's like you can build a team.
Yep, a team of AI agents. A friend of mine, I saw his process. I was blown away because he built out personas for each of them, and each of them had specific tasks they were assigned in this process. You're right. And he's got an excellent marketing company because he used that for himself. Then he created a system. Now he trains and can take coach, speaker, consultant, whoever wants to grow their business. Now he's got this is the thing that people, I think, miss out on is I guess it goes back even further. I got to look at it as a foundational thing. Do you see yourself as a creator or as a consumer? If you see yourself as a creator, you've got to be using all the tools available to you that make sense to be able to differentiate, to better communicate, to get in front of. Speed is the name of the game. Like best known beats best, as Grant Cardone says. And if you want to be better known, you might not be best known, but if you want to be better known at all, you've got to leverage all the tools available to you. AI is just one of them. Social media is another. There are so many different tools available. You've got to be using them.
I love that train of thought. I'm a big proponent for, if someone's a coach or an executive, they should also have a mentor or a coach to keep them sharp, right?
Absolutely.
So I signed up for call it a coaching program, management consulting program. And this person's organization, they tell a story of how he had a 60-minute call with Grant Cardone. And he said he got his money's worth in the first 3 minutes when Grant pulled up his Instagram page or his LinkedIn page or whatever social media page it was. And I said, all right, show me yours. And so he did. He goes, what do you see as different between these 2 pages? He goes, well, your follower count, this. He's like, no, you see this above the fold? This was all today. Like these posts, I did like 10 a day. My team got all this volume done today. He goes, you're doing once a week. I'm doing 10 times a day. How can you expect to catch up to me if I'm 70 times more productive than you? And I took that and I'm like, John, I want to get to your LinkedIn story next, but I'm going to segue into
Okay.
saying I took that information and I looked at podcasting. And I'm like, I've been podcasting off and on with some decent regularity, inconsistently, but definitely at least monthly for now 7 years.
Wow.
And when I heard that, I was like, oh, a light bulb moment. I was like, I'm just not doing nearly enough. Like if I'm not happy with the result I'm getting, which I was okay with it. It was fine. My most recent YouTube channel had 27,000 plays and over
Great.
2.5 years. And I was like, that's great. Like that's more known than majority of competitors.
Yep.
I was like, what if I did this more and better and I tried new things? So then now I'm at 310,000 plays in YouTube, and that was only like 4 months. It's like, wow, you can hockey stick your growth with just one paradigm shift. Now, I want to bring up your LinkedIn profile because you've got nearly 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. And for the average B2B sales rep, like I researched a few of my friends that do B2B sales or B2B marketing. They're like 300, 450 connections. Like they maybe post never or like once a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at John and you're like, 3 times today, 30,000 different followers. Like I want to hear your LinkedIn journey.
Yeah. So I'm highly competitive with myself, not necessarily with others. I do want to win, but I also realize that the goal is not to ever be number one. I know that sounds awfully defeatist because I know I can't. When I'm coming into an industry new, there's no way that I'm going to catch up to someone that has 10 years ahead of me in connections, in client base, and in experience. And if on top of that, they're really skilled at selling, I can't catch them. So what I really wanted to know when I got hired in my first time in a B2B in 2016, I asked them, I said, what's the best this territory's ever done? Give me a number. So they gave me a number. I'm like, all right, I'm going to beat that number my first full year. So how do I accomplish that? So I'm strongly self-motivated. And now that I've got a number, it's like, I'm going to beat that number. How am I going to do that? Well, I want to use all the tools available to me. And I'd heard of LinkedIn. I was in a corporate role. All the business came to me, a Fortune 10 company. But in that, my opinion, had no need for social media because I was plenty busy with all that was on my plate. I wasn't thinking down the road of this is personal branding. This is keeping my resume alive for the next opportunity. And I definitely wasn't thinking of it for sales. But when I got into that and I looked up the platform like this is incredible because not only does this help me get in front of people virtually in another way beyond email and phone calls, this helps me learn about their organization, helps me learn about them if they're on LinkedIn. So when I show up, this is why I believe I earned trust so quickly. When I showed up, the very first questions I asked them had absolutely nothing to do about sports or the weather. It had everything to do with, or even those later. So how long have you worked here? I already knew how long they'd worked there. What I asked them would be, I see you started off as maintenance guy. Now you're the maintenance director just 3 years later. How did you accomplish that? That's a whole different icebreaker than somebody that shows up and said, hey, what do you like about sports? What do you do for fun? How long have you been here? Those are lazy questions that everybody asks. Somebody shows up and asks a question like that. That meant 2 things. Number 1, I actually care about you because I studied you. And number 2, I studied you. So the questions I'm going to be asking you is because I learned about you. I want to know about you. I'm not here to sell you a car. I'm here to figure out what makes a good day for you, what makes a bad day for you. Is there anything I have that can help it make a better day for you? And that's how I earn trust. And then on top of that, I just realized I need to connect with, I figured out who is a good connection. At first, I connect with anybody because I needed to get more than 0 connections. But after a while, I figured out who's a better connection. And over time, I figured out an approach where I'm regularly pruning away connections that aren't active or don't fit in the current role that I'm in. So I try to keep below that 30,000. I'd be over it by now, but I try to keep it below that because after that, I can only have followers and I like what I can do with direct connections.
Huh?
So I'm keeping it
Interesting.
under 30. I might get over 30 eventually because I just can't avoid it. But for right now, I'm constantly trimming out people that aren't active on the platform, that I'm not in that industry anymore. But it was a journey. It took me several years, but now I can speak with, and I have on multiple stages, in person, virtually, and including that in coaching that I do. It's the most powerful, most trusted, most profitable B2B platform in the world, but it's so grossly underutilized that just with one session, I can help someone, if they're going to do the work, I can help someone transform and start to utilize their platform like they never thought possible. and stand out in very thin air in their industry in a good way from what I learned over the years than just put it into a system and a process.
It's an interesting point about the 30,000 mark. With Facebook, it's 5,000.
Right.
But they may have since changed that, but there was a while that was the maximum connection list.
Yeah.
So you're intentionally not growing from the quantity standpoint. And you're like, how do I get the best connections within the limit of the platform? That's an interesting play. I like that.
Yeah.
John, I have to ask you, this is one of my favorite parts of the show. It's the leave a question, ask a question segment, which means that the last guest that I had on the show, not knowing anything about you, it's an anonymous question. And then you have the opportunity to ask a question for the next guest without knowing who they are.
Oh.
So the question for you is, how do you balance between utter belief that what you're doing is worthwhile and at the same time confronting objectively all of the ways that it could fail?
That's so good, because I used to be an eternal optimist, meaning rainbows and unicorns, everything's good, house could be on fire. Well, at least we got a way to roast marshmallows. It's a good thing I married a realist. We'd be living in a box down by the river probably, and like, hey, well, the kids got a place to play, So realistic optimism is extremely powerful because you are aware of all the possible ways that it might not work. And you're actually okay with that, because what I learned from those people who are highly successful was two things. Number one was that you had to go through what doesn't work to figure out what does. Nobody gets lucky on the first time. So you're going to have to work through a process of that didn't work, it worked somewhat, didn't work at all. Okay, what can I take from that for the next attempt? But also never being disheartened by that, because I know it's part of the process in order to get to where I want to go. Also, the more encouraging thing on the backside is when I heard the journeys, and I've seen that, I interviewed people who are highly successful that most people don't know, because it's relatable. If I interviewed and got the chance to interview somebody who's wildly famous, it wouldn't be relatable, because people would think, well, I can't achieve that. So while you're aware that you've got to work through what doesn't work so you can determine what does, also, by the time you get to the 12th inch, whatever the goal is, and you're making progress and there's setbacks along the way and you're learning, and as you're going, you get to the 12th inch, guess what? It doesn't stop there. Anybody who's highly successful, the 12th inch is a time to celebrate, but they've been celebrating wins all along the way. When they get to the 12th, it's like that task is complete. That big, hairy, audacious goal I've completed. What's next? They don't stop there. They don't stay there. So your life done right is always going to be, like you said earlier, figuring things out. So how you balance belief is belief in what you've learned, belief in your commitment to continue going after something that it's valid. You've looked to people you respect, people that have been there, done that, and say, is this doable? And they say yes, then I'll figure it out. But I won't quit. I'll keep going after it. I'll figure it out. If you've got people that you respect, that you trust, that are telling you you've got a good idea, stay with it. Stay with it. Figure it out. What I also learned,
you don't have to do it in a vacuum.
Back to the younger. Well, yes, when I was younger, I looked for affirmation, not confirmation. I wanted people to be impressed or to get their approval, and I'd ask questions that were designed that way. When I'm asking for confirmation, my questions are very different now, because I want to know before I go down this path, does this have serious potential to it? I want to know what the risks are. I want to know the pros and cons. I want to know those things before I get into it. I'm asking for confirmation that I'm taking a good step versus affirmation where I want people to think well of me. And that's, I think, where the confidence part comes in that I didn't have before when I was younger and made a lot of bad choices because I wanted to impress people. I didn't want to learn from the ones who are highly successful and then apply that in my life.
Wow, that is such an interesting frame because I can look back at my own life anecdotally, and the periods where I was most interested in affirmation or impressing people, I had the least self-respect. And the periods where I had the most self-respect, I was the least interested in praise.
Right. Yeah.
Because it meant nothing. Because I was like, I've already won or earned my own self-respect.
Right.
Like what your opinion of me, which hopefully is positive because I respect myself, so I'm not delusional, right? But if someone were to give me negative feedback, I was like, oh, where's that coming from? If it's legit, you can adjust and make amends. If it's not legit, like it's just people hating for whatever reason, who cares? But younger Ross would have been like, no, I'm being hated. This is awful. And it's just like, that's the price of admission.
Yes. I remember when I got my first troll on LinkedIn a few years back. It was the first time I'd ever had somebody that was just one negative comment after another. And no matter how politely I responded, I realized, oh, this person is a troll. It was the first time I had to delete and block somebody, but I had gotten to the point where I had enough eyeballs where that occurred. That's just a point of you get to a spot where, and I'll get them occasionally on my YouTube channel, where I'll get occasionally some of those snarky comments, but that's just proof that you're getting enough eyeballs to get those. If you're not getting any comments, well, you haven't gotten anywhere. My question that I would love to have asked of the next person, the next guest that you have, is how do you know that, as best as possible, that someone that says they want to collaborate with you is actually going to be a good collaboration partner? That's a question I'd leave for the next guest, because that was something I had to learn the hard way over a course of a good number of years. Because even the ones that that I thought would be good collaboration partners, even after I thought I qualified them pretty well, I still learned the hard way. Nope. And it cost me, literally cost me thousands of dollars. That was something that I had to figure out. So that's a question I leave for the next guest, because I learned that lesson the hard way more than once, even after I thought I had qualified good collaboration partners. It turned out I hadn't. And there were a few more things I had to add to that qualification list before I
that could be
put time and money
friendships,
into it.
That could be employers, that could be employees, that could be like, you name it, customers.
Yeah.
I love the quote as it relates to this that my grandfather and father have said is, no business is better than bad business. Meaning, it's better to not to make a deal at all if the deal is going to be, toxic or go sideways or blow up. Save yourself the heartache.
Yes, it's far better to say no if you have any question marks there than to say, okay, no. It's got to be a definite yes or just no for everything else. Yeah. Yep.
Amen.
Yep.
Well, John, this is going to be a very light and fun question.
Okay.
How can people get a hold of you and how can they get in touch?
Well, there are so many ways. Well, I would say the best way is to connect with me on LinkedIn. The reason why I recommend that is you go to my website, you can go to YouTube. If you want to digest content, can't go to sleep, hit that. You'll be asleep in no time. So YouTube channel, website, that's fine. Why I say LinkedIn is because you can message me directly, but you can also kind of get a feel for who I am and what I've done. And my content is there as well as on my website and on YouTube. So that's what I would say. Start there. If it's a professional person in particular, if it's a personal, I liked what I heard and I want to learn more, then I would go to YouTube. I have hundreds and hundreds of videos that are all designed to be something that adds value or encourages people. So on a personal level, I'd say YouTube. On a professional level, absolutely hit me up on LinkedIn.
Good answer. Everyone listening, I would challenge you to find content from maybe not celebrities or the people at the very top of the food chain in influence, but find content from whether it's myself or John and share that with a friend, because one, the person creating it means an awful lot to them.
Oh, sure does.
I can speak for myself. But two, it's probably going to be more beneficial, if possible, to the person receiving it, because then we can relate. We're trying to have conversations that are relatable on the show. And it's all about just finding the right people and filtering out the wrong people. So I'll leave it with that. John, thank you so much for coming on the show. Everyone else, be well.
Thank you very much, Ross.